Greetings, everyone. This is your second critique for your project dealing with shutter speed and looking at that. First project we looked at aperture, how that visually affects a photograph. This project we looked at shutter speed and how that affects a photograph and how we can use it to transform images. And that's what I really want to see in this project, is see you transforming images with shutter speed. One of the fun things we did with this is painting with light. I'm going to try and get this note before I do this. I'm going to try and get this done in half an hour. If not, I might have to make a couple videos. We'll see how it goes. All right, so anyways, we have painting with light here. And most people, it seems when we get with painting with light, the first thing we want to do is make lines with light in a dark room, and that can be fun and great and interesting. This way, we're taking more of a selective look where we're selectively lighting certain parts of the scene. I think that can be sometimes a bit more sophisticated and interesting way to approach lighting a photograph. And I really appreciate the light in this photograph and how we've emphasized this area with a little bit more light and a little less light out here. And almost like a lot less light out here, something like that. But overall, I think the photograph works. So I kind of like the shadows that we get in the form. Though the object's kind of in the center of the photograph, doesn't bother me too much though, because of the dynamic nature of this radial and this thing shooting off here in the shadows and this lighter and the darker. I think overall works pretty well. One of the other things you were supposed to do was to track a shot, what we refer to as panning. And usually we're looking at standing still and moving with an object as it moves across a scene, and that's panning. But this is also panning where we're on the object moving and we're focused, on something that's kind of comes across as static. The moving object here, the bike, is what's sharp, and then the ground, which is static. But since we're focusing on the bike moving, we get all this ground moving. This is a different way to approach panning, and I really like the perspective. A lot of times, I have panning is, I don't know, it's kind of a challenging one, I find, for people to approach and to really transform interesting shots. A lot of times people stand, like I said, they follow something moving. I really like the perspective I get here where I'm on the moving thing and the ground moves, but I also like the composition, the abstractness that is created with this, and it really takes it out of that normal situation, normal scene, normal viewer approach, and gives me something much more abstract and I think therefore interesting and challenging for the viewer. So I like this image quite a bit. Now the opposite here, I'm not so engaged with this image. It's just, it's a static object there, but I don't see anything too dynamic or engaging. It's just a car sitting there in the middle of the frame. However, when we go to the next image, I really like this image. I think this one transforms it. Shutter speed transforms this image into something very different and very engaging from you as a viewer. I also like this one too. It seems a very banal, simple shot. A little library, book cupboard, person in front of it. Because we use this slow shutter speed and this person's moving, I'm really engaged with the push-pull between the sharpness of these books and the amorphic figure in the foreground here. And I get the sense of human form, but I have no sense of identity, and it makes me really question and wonder what's going on. I think this is really good use of shutter speed to transform an image to become engaging. All right, good. Okay, so the next portfolio we're looking at here, I can't remember whose work this is. I think it's Tiffany's here. All right, so looking at the work here, one thing, we didn't have a album to go to, so it'd be good if you could make us an album so we're confident looking at the images that you want us looking at. So anyways, this image, I want something sharp in it. And the flowers are blurry and the background's blurry, but I like the composition, I like the color, I like the green and the yellows and the placement, and I like how they contrast with the negative space, this texture. But I got nothing here that's sharp. I think most of us probably would put the flowers as sharp and let the other stuff go soft. I can almost see it the other way working too, but here I've got nothing sharp, so I was a little disappointed. I really kind of like this image. I love the dramatic lighting that we have. And I love the face being upside down, and I think it totally works because of the high contrast lighting. I'm torn a little bit. Like I almost want maybe just a little bit more exposure and information here, and maybe just a teeny bit here. But I also can see how that might just kind of ruin the effect of the image. So I'm push-pull. I really love the engagement. Sometimes though that there's nothing else, it leaves me. I don't look and search in the image as much, and I think that's what that other information could give me. But I can also see how that might hinder the image. So there's a lot of unexpected surprises I'm really engaged with in this image. Now this image, I'm really left flat. There's not a lot going on. I mean, someone's playing the piano, but the figure's out of focus. The piano's mostly out of focus. Way down here we get some focus. There's some interesting reflection here. It looks like there's a flash here. That's not aesthetically helping the image at all. So not one of my favorites. I think this one really needs to be pushed much further. Though I have this one, I think this does push the image further. This I find much more abstract and interesting and engaging. There's almost a little too much blurry here for my personal likings. There's a lot more energy in this photograph than previous. I wish that, I don't know if the camera, if you have a tripod or something that would help it, but if we could get the camera still and just have this figure over here moving and blurring and interacting with those keys, I think that would be a better shot. But I like how the shutter speed, the slow shutter speed, starts to transform this image. But I think we could push this one further too and play with the technicals a little bit to get a push-pull between sharp and soft that would be a more effective image. But I think this is a much more engaging image than this one. This image also, this one, I like shutter speed and panning needs to be pushed further. We need to get a even slower shutter speed. And that can be challenging sometimes. That's one thing with panning, is getting a slow enough shutter speed, especially if you're shooting during the day, can be a real challenge. I suspect that was one of the challenges that they encountered with this scene. So much sun, should have come out at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or some other time where there was a little less light, or come at twilight or dawn, dusk or dawn, and we can get a little lower light situations and longer shutter speed. So that I think is one of the troubles here. Shutter speed doesn't transform this enough to be a really interesting, engaging image. However, I do look at this image. I don't know if you look at a lot of contemporary photography. There's a book called The Photograph as Contemporary Art, which I have read, and it's really kind of helped me, enlighten me in a lot of the thought processes of some contemporary photographers. And I can see this image kind of fit in there. We have a very banal, everyday scene, and a lot of contemporary photography utilizes this sort of imagery and looks at the sort of construct of the photograph, but also the construct of the spaces and the construct of culture and suburbia and all that sort of stuff. And I see that a little bit in this image. I'm not sure if that's what they're going for, but if I look at shutter speed transforming it, not so much. This one I think is another image where I love the figure here, and I love how the head gets blurred. We get that almost sort of nodding motion. But again, I have nothing sharp in here. I just want something sharp to grab onto and then contrast with that blur of the slow shutter speed. So, all right, well, let us move on. I believe this next portfolio is David. And I wanted to look at these three images of the boy here. I think this one's kind of interesting, like a typical everyday portrait that we might take of our son or another child or whatever, looking down at them, because we're taller. I like how the green grass around him, just simplifies the scene. I think that's really effective. He's just slightly soft or out of focus or something like that. Very nice, engaging expression on the face. So, I don't know that I find it a great art shot, but I think it's a good photograph. When I look at this one, this is not, there's not much going on here. I mean, there's stuff going on. I kind of like the background, the trees, but the boy's out of focus, or the person, I'm not sure. I should be careful assigning gender to these people. I know my son often gets called a girl. He's fairly oblivious of it, even at 9. So, but anyways, the child here, slightly is out of focus. I like the background, and the expression looks like it has potential there, but the autofocusness just ruins it for me, and I'm just not engaged with it. This one I really like. I really like the lighting in this image, and I like the subdued nature of it. It doesn't even bother me like the hood here is somewhat out of focus. This is definitely sharp. The face is kind of sharp. You may want to watch your focus a little bit. That doesn't bother me too much in this image. I really love the high contrast dramatic light of this image. And the expression is a bit more, smiles are not necessarily disingenuous, but it's so often we pull out a camera and people, we get like trained to smile. And I love that here we have just whatever this child is feeling at this moment is communicated to me, and the lighting kind of helps inform that. And it's a really nice, well-structured photograph, which I appreciate. This is another one. This is one of those moments you just capture, and the interaction between the goat and the child, and the environment. All these things kind of inform me, engage me. Shutter speed isn't transforming this image too much, other than we get a little bit of blur with the goat, which I think kind of helps. It shows the movement and the interaction and the action of the moment. So I think in the end that works out pretty well. And I think I love all the green and even the magenta-y, reddish, pinkish jacket contrasting with the grass, really pulls her out and pushes her out. I love the building here. There's a nice push-pull between all these things. Nice composition, little movement, lines, shapes, values, textures. I think this is one of those where you capture that in that moment, and it's good. It's engaging. There are a number of these images that you explored with the shoes and looks like movement. I think this was the most interesting that I found. And it's good to see all that exploration. I'm glad to see you're trying lots of different things and pushing and playing with shutter speed, and I think that's really good. One thing I think we need to be careful of, all of us, is what we put forward in those final portfolios. I think what would be good, most of you, is to have an in-progress working album we can look at and comment on, and then have your final image. Photographs, it has been said in the past that a good photographer is nothing more than a good editor. And what that means is take a lot of photographs and just show the really good ones. And I think that's what we could do. I think maybe, David, you could work on is for your final portfolio, just pull out those best images and put them in there. Have another album where you're just works in progress, because I think it's really good to see the different things that you're trying. But in the end, we just want to show the successful ones. So I think this is one of the more successful ones. A little blown out here. The shoes are right in the middle. Maybe if we cropped it, maybe if we actually take off some stuff on this side, that kind of like the lines I have here, bottom. Yeah, I don't know. Crop it at the bottom. Take the bottom quarter or third off. That maybe kind of helps. We could crop this image a little bit more and transform it to become more engaging. But, all right. Let us move on. Let's take a look at Daniel's images here. We have these two, and both are kind of soft, and I'm not sure if I think they're long shutter speeds. The thing I look at these two images is I like this one so much more. I love the dramatic lighting. I think less exposure makes this a better photograph. I don't know if you need to watch your focus, or maybe something bumped, or maybe you're in this camper and things are moving, or what's going on here. A little blurry, but I really love the light in this image. I love how you're playing with light and focusing on it, and it's really effective. Just need to get a little bit more sharpness in it. And so I think it's interesting to see how these two photographs really feel different. Same composition, same action, same thing going on, but the high contrast light, I think, engages me so much more in this image. Here's a painting with light image, and this is I think there's a real in-depth exploration of these lines, things. I have, and maybe I should say this before the project, but I have a preference for painting with light where I don't mind us drawing and look at, but to me what I find interesting is this potential to create something with light that just doesn't exist within a scene that does exist. So what I mean by that is if I get a little environmental information and then you give me this sort of object, there's a lot more potential of interest with these things Well, when I look at this thing, and I looked at some of the other painting light images, there's definitely some good exploration in there. But I would say, if you can create this form in this scene, then you've got, almost like aliens or something going on. There's such a potential to create something visually that doesn't exist within an actual environment. And then we utilize, what is often photography's strength, which is to capture reality and to think of it as this documentary medium. And then you confront them with this documentary nature and then this super unrealistic element in it. So, and I'll probably say that a few more times, because that's a lot of people seem to really engage with painting with light. I'll talk more about it later. This is probably one of my favorite photographs, probably the most successful technical photographs of the year. I love how we're using panning. I love how we isolate the girl. I'm assuming on a skateboard or some sort of wheeled thing, and she's just sitting there and going for a ride. And I think you did a good job panning with it. And I like how the panning simplifies the scene. The blurriness of the grass. I also love like her arms sticking out, the linear quality of that, and her hair, which kind of mimics that, and then all the lines here. A lot of nice contrast lines, the expression, the concentration on the face. What a wonderful photograph. All right, let's move on. Cars are such a accessible tool for us in this country to deal with panning, and this one's kind of interesting because I would like this better if this car were even sharper. I love how this thing goes blurry, because there's different speeds and different push and pull of these images, and if we could just get this one a little bit sharper, though we do have some sharpness, like the figures seem fairly sharp. I think it could be better. It would be better if we can get more sharp on this car, and I like how this thing becomes blurry and almost ghost-like. The green's blurring out, that doesn't bother me at all. Here's a nice use of long shutter speed. The camera is static, but the water is moving, and then we have probably, I should have looked on Flickr, it'll tell us, half second maybe, I would guess, exposure. We have this angel hair, and I like all the greens, a little bit of dog here, and these things in here, it's kind of this mesh and merge of the human-made and the natural environments, and then the pretty water effect. I kind of appreciate the pretty water and the human, less pretty human elements there. Here I like this one. We're given a much more natural sort of look in this water, and it's very serene and pretty. And I love the vibrant greens of the scene, and kind of blurring leaves here. It's just a pretty photograph. This is one where I love the movement. I love the lines of this pushing up, but I don't think that you consider the environment very well. There's just too much distracting, cluttery stuff going on. You need to maybe get higher on this or move them against a blank wall or somehow eliminate that. That's so important in a photograph, is to consider everything in that frame and to control it. And that's the difficult thing about photography, is controlling reality. We get these interesting scenes, so often interesting photographs or interesting subjects or objects, but then the stuff around them just distracts from it. That is probably the number one issue in photography, is getting that interesting subject you find and then getting it in a context that accentuates the interestingness of that subject. Interesting subject, environment's distracting. This is another one of those, floating lights. We do get a little environmental information here. I think it'd be better if we could. I don't know if the photograph was the camera was being handheld, or if it was just things were moving. I think it'd be interesting. We get a little bit more reality here. See, what I want to do with this image is I want to get this camera on a tripod, have this light going on, because I think there's an interesting form here. Though maybe we could push it and make it more meaningful or symbolic or something. But I want to take a flash. I don't know if you all have handheld flashes. I have several of them. Walk out here and just pop these things. Pop this tree. Give it a flash. You make the flashes that go on your camera. Usually there's a button on there that you can make them go off. And I just walk around and pop this, and maybe pop this back here. And I bring in some other more objective elements in here with this very subjective form. And to me, that often creates a push-pull. So I think there's some interesting exploration here, but in the end, it's I kind of like this one quite a bit, though. I like the the blurriness of the subject here. I like how I can see through this part of him, and I can't through this. I do wish there was something in here sharp, like if this truck could have been sharp, or this tree. There's that weird like sharpness here and a blurriness here. I'm not sure how that was created. Maybe rotating the camera or something. I do like the photograph, though. Not that every photograph has to be sharp, but, you know, I don't know. So there's, maybe I like it. I don't know. This image engages me, and I want to look at it more and analyze it more. And I'm not sure at this point, but in the end, it might be fine just as it sits. All right, I believe we looked at Drew's already. Let's take a look at Ginger's. I might have to break this up into two different sets. We're already getting close to 20 minutes and not even halfway done. All right. Love this photograph. Very well composed, interesting. I don't even know what it is. I don't even care. I think I figured it out looking at the other photographs in the portfolio that I was a fan. But I like the motion. I like the sharpness here and the shiny and the movement and the circle and the negative space. I think it's a really well composed image. Very modernist image. Maybe I need to do a lecture on that, modernist imagery versus postmodernist imagery. It seems a very modernist photograph, and modernists were so good with composition and light. So I like this one too. I like how she is really sharp, and the other fella here is kind of blurry. I like those different movements, and I think shutter speed kind of helps with that. Always the horizon is off a little bit. I'm not sure in this image. It doesn't bother me too much because we have the swinging form, so it kind of gets me in the mood for this movement. But I don't know. I'd be curious to see what it looked like if we straighten up the horizon line. But it's probably fine just as it sits. So I think this is a good use of shutter speed. So I think these were some really interesting relationships between the figure, the light, and the backdrop. I like how you controlled your environment. You got this backdrop, and also I find meaning and symbolism in the backdrop too. Organic human, and then organic leaves, but it's a plastic curtain, I'm assuming. But I think it works out. Honestly, my favorite of them was this. This one seems really abstract and almost non-objective. You get this like environment of fake grass, and this light here, and this kind of pseudo-human form in it. I really like this photograph. I love the composition and light. I like everything about this image. It really intrigues me, and it's a very abstract image, and to me a very engaging photograph. Maybe I should have ended off the last one. This one is, I don't know, just driving down the road. There's a portfolio somewhere in there just driving down the road. This is portfolio I've been trying to get. I've always thought a great portfolio would be drive across this country, never get out of your car, photograph the whole thing from your car. I've told this to my students. I've not had one student do it yet. So I'm actually starting to take this up myself. So I don't know. I'm not overly engaged with the image. It shows some panning. Maybe technically successful, but the horizon's off. Come on. Not really. No. I want to straighten up that horizon. I don't know. It's there. It's interesting. It's successful technically. I think it needs to be pushed conceptually or maybe visually or symbolically. So I'm just left like, hey, cars. In this country, cars are a dime a dozen. There are more cars than people in this country. So I don't know if that's true. Maybe I just made up a stat. I thought I heard that somewhere, though, recently. There are more cars than people in this country. That might be true. All right. I'm looking at Jamie's work here. I love the composition of here, but it just seems technically off. Like things aren't, like the cup isn't sharp, the lamp isn't sharp, the mirror isn't sharp. Nothing here is really sharp. And this is one of those images where I don't see, there's not a car moving or something action here moving. So I don't know why everything's blurry. So that distracts me. And maybe if I crop it, maybe I'll just come up with black here. There are interesting things going on in this photograph, but we have not explored them enough to pull them out and make it a great photograph. But I think there's definitely potential in this scene for a great photograph, but we haven't pushed it and pushed our understanding of the technicals enough to pull that photograph out. So blurry. I want to crop off this dark, maybe focus in on this stuff a little bit more and get this sharper. Love the mirror though. The mirrors have great potential in photographs to be things. I really like this photograph. Um, it's and Jane, you seem to play and have a fun with filters. I don't know what you're using to find these filters, or if you're pushing them in Photoshop, or if you're using some other photo editor with these filters. Filters I think are interesting. And this one I like the texture. It gives it's sort of a old look to it, like maybe 70s photograph or something like that. And there are a lot of great filters out there that do this, and it lends itself to this image for whatever reason. I like this coffee cup half full. I like that it's almost in my face. I even kind of like the blurry edge and the sharpness back here. You know, it's almost like how you feel in the morning before you have that first cup of coffee. So maybe they need a second cup. Still feeling a little blurry here. No, I actually really like the photograph as it sits. I find it interesting and engaging. But the one thing that one and this one, I like both these photographs. You know, again, I think you're playing with these filters and they add a feel to the image. There's like a grainy quality and a high contrast quality that helps push this image beyond something better than just the straight out of the camera image. I suspect I'd be curious to see this image compared to the straight out of the camera image, because I think this is more expressive. I suspect this is more expressive than the original image you had. So I think you're using that well and exploring that well. I like this photograph. But what this photograph and the other photograph don't do is I don't see shutter speed being an active role, an active participant in creating the photograph. And I don't necessarily need that from every photograph in your portfolio, but it's good to see it in most of the photographs. You know, and that's what the other criticism of this. I don't see shutter speed being an active participant in creating an interesting photograph. Now here's another one where we get a little blurriness in this scene, where shutter speed is playing a role, and if the image is still falling a little flat for me. I think I like the other one where it's a little darker around it. Maybe they added exposure to create this blurriness. There's actually, this creates something interesting, this ghost cup next to this cup and the ghost lamp next to the lamp. That starts to create something interesting with shutter speed. But I still don't think we've quite nailed this photograph as to what needs to happen here. Interesting elements. Now we're pushing something with shutter speed where it becomes somewhat meaningful, but we still need to crop this image more or have it be a little darker, or something needs to be pushed here. I do like this image, and I like how shutter speed is playing a role here, a very active role in freezing this scene. And I like the movement. I can just see that movement of the chain. I think you've captured that so well here. I like the different diagonal lines we have. Again, you deal so well with the filters. You push these photographs, you abstract them, you have a sense of what needs to happen. I actually like how this house and the sky kind of meld and blend, and how that's folded here. We have like a really high contrast, almost what would be technically pushed too far scene. As far as, you know, the exposure seems overexposed to me. That's what I'm trying to say. But it doesn't bother me a bit. I think it works in this image, because if I have too much information in the houses and the sky back here, it's going to distract me from the real focus of this photograph, which is this swing, which is flinging wildly out of control and a little bit chaotic, and the chains moving. And I like how that's captured, you know, and up here, and this thing sits up here on the lines and the textures down here. This to me, out of all the images here, you've utilized shutter speed in an aesthetic manner, and it is successful, and it's interesting, and it's engaging, and I like it. And that's what I don't see in the other photographs. I don't see shutter speed playing much of an active role. We do get a little bit in this one, but still, you know, something needs to be pushed in this photograph. And this one's kind of interesting too. It's, you know, it's less of, there is some shutter speed, like the chain being on an angle and we're capturing it. I'd be almost interested to see if you could pan the child in the swing, follow them with this movement. That might be more interesting. Though, hey, the shoes look nice. And I'm not overly distracted by the background. Again, you're pushing with the filters. I think helps. It does something with the images here. But that's why I want to see more of an understanding of the shutter speed. That's not what, I'm not quite catching that in your portfolio. So maybe think about that as you move forward here. All right, I am going to quit this and probably make a second video to finish it up. Otherwise, it's going to be really long. And I'm not sure if... all right. 28 P2Crit Part1. Two J. All right. Similar to 15.